but it looks like Ontario Premier Doug Ford wants to call an early election in Ontario for February the 29th, which is just over a month from now. That's right, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who, I mean, the polls say he is so ahead in the polls and all. He wants to call an election. He says that he needs a stronger mandate to deal with Trump and the tariffs. Well, Doug Ford already has a majority. He has a majority of what? I think like what 30 or something like that. Like I mean it's a strong majority. I mean we can put it up right now if you want. He does have a strong majority. He can do whatever he wants. The current seats he has is 79, and it only need he only you only need 63 seats in the assembly to have a majority. And Doug Ford already has a strong majority. I mean, it's not a tiny majority, it's a big one. So he can do whatever he does. I don't know how much stronger of a majority of a mandate he needs. Um, if you ask me, I think he's arrogant. I think he's just power hungry. I don't think it has anything to do with Donald Trump. And I'll be honest with you, I don't care what the polls have to say. The last poll right now, it says if there was an election held today, uh, Doug Ford and the progressive conservatives would win with 52%. The liberals would get 23, the NDP would get 18. It would be a leader. I don't buy that crock of crap. I'll tell you why. People are liking the fact that Doug Ford is being tough on Trump and everything. But I think, and I better not speak too soon because let me tell you something. When it comes to Canadians, man, I mean, Canadians are the people who voted in Trudeau, the worst leader. I mean, and not just once, but three times. So I don't want to speak too soon. And he may very well win, but I'll tell you something. I don't think people are going to appreciate the fact that this guy is who already has a majority, who has an election coming up, and I think just over a year or maybe just under. I think it's either a year from now or just over a year from now, 2026. And he's saying, I need another. This has nothing to do with Trump. He has a majority. He can do what he wants. He just wants to. He thinks maybe he might get unpopular next year, so he wants to have the election now and be secure for another 4 years as premier. He's already been premier from 2018 until today. And I don't think he's done anything. I'll be honest with you. I don't like Doug Ford. I voted for him in 2018. I thought he would be for the people. I thought he's nothing like his brother, the late great Rob Ford. I've always said the wrong Ford brother died, and I stand by that. If Rob Ford was here, I think he would have been a lot more of a populist, a lot more for the people, a lot less elitist, a lot less greedy. I don't think he'd be there for more than 10 years. I think Rob Ford would be in there, do his thing, and then he would leave. He wouldn't want to be a career politician, greedy like Doug Ford, who I think is just trying to use this thing of Trump as an excuse to have another election and be there for another 4 years, to be there until what, 2028, almost 2030. So, and I think a lot of Ontarians are going to be very miffed at that. And if Doug Ford is not careful, he could end up being Theresa May. Remember Theresa May back in what was it, 2017? Everybody thought Theresa May, the former British Prime Minister, was going to win. She called an election because, first of all, she was she wanted to give the excuse that I need a bigger mandate to deal with Brexit. Remember that? And by the way, she wasn't really a true Brexiteer. You know, she really wasn't. She voted against Brexit, and then she became prime minister, and she used Brexit and she tried to bring in a very terrible deal where the EU would get so much out of the UK. She was not a true Brexiteer, and she called an election because she wanted a bigger mandate, and she had a majority. It was a small majority, but it was still a majority, and everyone thought she would win. by a big landslide. She'd take everything. London, she'd take Manchester, she'd take everything. Red Wall, everything. Jeremy Corbyn, that socialist, who, by the way, I've grown. The more I've researched Jeremy Corbyn, I wouldn't vote for him. He's a socialist and everything. And I'm not a socialist, I'm not a communist, I'm not a lefty. But there are some things about Jeremy Corbyn that I do like. But everybody thought, oh, she would crush Jeremy Corbyn. She ended up going from a majority to a hung parliament and a minority. She couldn't do anything. And the same thing could happen to Doug Ford. The same thing. And the reason, Doug Ford, I used to like him in 2018, ever since the coronaviruses and the lockdowns, and he sided with the lefties, all chummy chummy with Trudeau and Freeland and all these people locking us down. It was Doug Ford's policies which got me locked up and Adam Skelly locked up and his restaurant locked up. And that was Doug Ford, and I don't like him ever since. And now he's being greedy. He's a typical politician, career politician. He wants power for God till hell freezes over. Has nothing to do with Donald Trump or tariffs or anything like that. He just wants power, and I think he's going to miff off a lot of Ontarians calling this election, which I think he's going to do. Now, I'm probably wrong. He's ahead 29, but there are, as I said, there are cases where a person has gone into elections so ahead in the polls and have ended up either winning by far less than they wanted to or just losing. I mean, Hillary Clinton, I mean, Theresa May, the NDP in British Columbia in 2013. I mean, there are countless cases. There are countless cases of these arrogant politicians going into an election light years ahead in the polls, and they think, well, I could burn somebody's house down and they'd still vote for me. I'm so ahead in the polls. I am unstoppable. I'm unbeatable. Ooh, ooh, ooh. And I'm going to just milk the people. I'm going to stay there till I'm dead or maybe even longer. And they end up losing. They end up losing. And I'll be honest with you, I think this is a stupid decision by Doug Ford. And they say he's going to call the election on Wednesday. Good. I think he better be careful. I know I'm not going to vote for him. I'm not voting for the Liberal, not voting, even though I will say this. You know, the Liberal leader in Ontario, Bonnie Crombie, she called out Doug Ford for hiding the statue of Canada's first Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald, for so long. I mean, this is the Liberal calling out a Conservative for being too politically correct and too woke. I mean, John A. Macdonald, the first prime, whatever you think of him, whatever mistakes he made, and he did make mistakes, but whatever mistake, he's the first prime minister of Canada. By the way, I like Sir John A. I don't agree with stuff on Indians, even though it was the Liberals who created the residential schools and who did a lot of the things to the Indians. I mean, hell, it was a one thing I like about John A. Macdonald, he believed in tariffs. He was a protectionist in the national policy. Research the national policy. If it wasn't for tariffs, protectionism, the national policy, and British pride, Canada would be nothing. Canada would be a 51st state even now. You wouldn't have Trump talking about all this. It'd be a 51st state now when the liberals were, you know, trying to cozy up to the U.S. John A. Macdonald was a nationalist, a patriot, a populist. He loved Canada. He loved the heritage of Canada, English Canada, and French Canada. He had the national policy, the tariffs. He built railways from east to west. He grew the country. Tariffs so that the big, mighty United States wouldn't swallow up everything that Canada held dear. That's the reason why Canada is a strong country now, even though it's getting weak now because of woke, left-wing, liberal globalism. There's no more Sir John A. Macdonald. They're hiding him, locking away, some of them are tearing down his statues, hiding his statues, and Bonnie Crombie called him out on that, rightfully so. So yeah, I wouldn't vote for her, but I do like that she called him out. I'm not voting NDP. I'm not voting Liberal. I'm not voting Conservative. I'll probably vote for a small party, Ontario Party or whatever. So yeah, that's my take on Doug Ford apparently going to call an election in Ontario. We'll see what happens. Personally, I think it's a stupid move. If Doug Ford had me in his orbit and I was advising him, I'd tell him, hey, Doug, you are This is a stupid move. This is.